Welcome to the Businessmen and Women of Color podcast. I am your host, Ann Alston, and it is my pleasure to bring quality programs to all of you. I am so excited to be back again this year with some amazing speakers. More than 54 speakers are on this season, and I can't tell you how thankful and grateful I am to have these wonderful, amazing people be on this particular platform. So please be sure to stop and look at all the pages, read the bios, connect with people, listen to all the podcasts that are posted this year, because there's a lot of information you just can't get anywhere else. So please take advantage of this unique opportunity. Just in case you didn't know, the purpose of the Businessmen and Women of Color podcast is to not only network our small businesses, but we're also sharing this information with the public for working professionals who may be thinking about entering this line of work. I also want to take a moment to thank our corporate sponsors, our family of authors, Butler Armstead Consulting Solutions, Human Resource Learning Center, J&F Enterprises, and Women Offering Wealth, along with many of our business partners and sponsors who's helping to make this season a success. Well, let me just get into this podcast because we have a whole lot to cover, and we have a special guest speaker who is here today that I find very fascinating. I met him at an event and we spun off a conversation, and I just been thinking about like, how can I get this guy to be on my podcast, because I think he's phenomenal. He also has an information technology and cybersecurity background, along with many accolades of different things that he has done. So I'm going to get right into his introduction because his experience is so extensive, and I can't wait for him to be on the podcast. Charles Acri is the owner of Acri Technology Services located in Glendale, Maryland. He has over 25 years of comprehensive enterprise information technology experience, providing executive and program management technical directions and solutions for the delivery of innovative government, commercial, and small business services. He also has experience and expertise in information technology, information assurance, customer service, network and computer administration, system security, and data center management. He is also very experienced in data analysis and design, dealing with the life cycle project management phases, and he is also very experienced with Unix clients and other different type of server environments that deal with enterprise networking. One of that I find is really amazing is that his organization not only provides the information technology, but he's also consulting services with various customers throughout the DMV area. A lot of his clients are government or commercial businesses or community service organizations or private organizations. He has worked for companies such as the Washington Technical Group, the SETA Corporation, and many others who had a privilege of having him on board. Charles possessed several degrees. One of them in particular is a Bachelor's of Science in Electrical Engineering from Tuskegee University, and he has extensive training in areas such as continuous technology updates, leadership and professional development, sun systems, solar systems, network administration training, and defense information systems, along with many other different training that he has taken over many years. So I can go on, but I want you guys to really read his bio that is going to be on his page, and I would like to welcome Charles to the podcast.
Thank you very much, Anne. That was a fantastic introduction.
Oh, well, you're so welcome, and you're a fantastic person. So I want to start off, first of all, about who is Charles Acri. How did you become the person you are today? Just starting back, in information technology, what got you into that type of career, and what inspired you to just take it to a whole new level?
So, I guess going all the way back to when I first started noticing technology as a small boy in South Georgia, I was fascinated by electricity. And from that fascination, I started doing a lot of reading and studying. And by the time I got into high school, I realized there was a career where I could go into understanding how devices work that utilize electricity and electronics. That was also about the dawn of electronics and computers coming in the age So my timing was interesting in learning technology from the very beginning of what we would call the computer revolution that we've kind of come out of, and now we're going into the information and the knowledge age now. Um, I guess somewhere in high school, I let everyone know, including teachers and counselors, that I wanted to go to college and go into engineering. And with no money, I talked to everybody. And by the time I got to my senior year, I had gotten enough attention between my academic performance and others that I received a 4-year scholarship and an internship with the Department of Defense to help me get my degree and
Wow,
get my career started.
that's fantastic. Okay, so you got your degree and you were on your way, and then so tell us about your experience and what motivated you to just continue on in this field after you got the scholarship.
So with the scholarship, the internship was with the Department of Defense with the Navy when they were located in Crystal City, Virginia, and that's right next to the Pentagon for people who are not in the Washington D.C. area. So I spent time in that internship between the Pentagon and Naval Air Systems Command headquarters, working with the engineers who were more experienced, developing my skills and abilities, and focusing my areas of expertise. At the beginning of my career, that was the beginning of converting analog systems into what we now call digital systems. And I had an opportunity to help work on a lot of projects and a lot of systems to help convert them to the technology today where they can actually talk to each other and they can talk to computers. So once I got into the computers, working in that office environment, at that time we did not have computers and PCs in the office, and we acquired one computer. And one of the engineers, because I was the youngest engineer in the office, said, "Why don't you go and learn how to use that, and then you can teach all the rest of us." And that was the beginning of my experience in working with computers. This was an old system back in the day. It actually didn't have a hard drive. It had cassette tape drives to store data, and it had a very rudimentary operating system. So from learning that system, I was able to
Hmm.
get my skills started with my engineering background and
Hmm.
grow it into where today I work with all types of computer technology, large and small.
Yeah, a lot of people forget that we used to have stuff on mainframes not that long ago. I mean, it was only in the 80s that we started really moving heavily into the digital realm. And there's a lot of young people who don't have no idea that that's what we had to do back then just to have a computer system. So it's amazing how fast technology has evolved over the last 20, 30 years.
Yes, you're right. As a matter of fact, in college, all of my training was done on the mainframe, and that computer system during my internship exposed me to the first desktop computer that, of course, now we all take for granted because we have them in homes and we have
Hmm.
laptops that are now mobile and portable. But back then, that one
Okay.
desktop actually took up the whole desktop.
Right. So let me ask you a question because at that day and time when you were doing your internship, how many people who were minorities was taking advantage of those type of opportunities back then?
I would say very few. The office that I worked in, I was the only African American in that office, and I was the first African American to work in that office. So that was a new experience for myself as well as the other engineers in that office. And it was a growing experience for me because coming out of South Georgia, my hometown was probably about 1/3 African American. Attending Tuskegee University, that was probably 95, 97% African American. Then coming to Washington, D.C., which is a predominantly African American city, being in an office where I was the only African American was kind of an odd experience. So it was something I could work with, but it was kind of surprising to find out I was the only
Hmm.
professional in that office.
Right. And you know what? I have to say that I would say for most of my IT career, I was the only African American and the only African American woman who was in that office in an IT role. And for me, I was actually used to it because I knew that that's the way it was in Washington D.C. where I grew up. So for me, I was just kind of used to that, and that was an uphill battle that I had to fight like each and every day that I went in the office. Being the only black woman, being the only black female in an all IT environment.
Yes, I definitely can relate. There were numerous challenges for myself. But what I always tell people, particularly when I speak to young people, is definitely be aware of when you're challenged, but be more aware of where you're trying to go and what you're trying to do with your life. You can always fight against something, but you gain a whole lot more when you fight for something, and that starts with fighting for yourself. And when you realize the effort you put out can be used to build up what you're after and your goals, then you reduce the effort, and somehow the things that challenge you start working for you and help reinforce moving you from where you are to where you want to be. And that's an experience that I had at numerous occasions in my life.
Absolutely. Okay, so tell us now. Here we're going to fast forward to today. With all this talent and background that you have, tell us about your organization and what you provide, and some of the really phenomenal things that you've done, for the government, or that's if you could talk about that stuff. But if not, just kind of give us, a little taste of all the stuff and accomplishments that you've done over the years.
Okay, so going back, coming out of college, I actually accepted a position with the Department of Defense, working here in the Washington, D.C. area, and that was the beginning of my professional career. The At the beginning, there's a lot of training and I received quite a bit in college and in my internship, but there's a lot of training of understanding, one, how the government works, but two, how business works. And then for myself, being a young professional, I also need to understand how to work with this new responsibility and this new independence of leading myself in an area where you really are challenged by the work and sometimes by the environment. So the first thing I had to realize was personal development was very key to me going from where I was as a young person, as a college student, a young professional, to becoming the person I am today. One of the things I would tell any individual at any age, but particularly young, for our youth, is that read, um, study, and understand who you are as a person so that you can help identify the kind of purpose and place you want to have in this life so you can move yourself where you want to go. And actually doing that is what started getting me recognized because that became part of the attitude of how I approached my work and my tasks and challenges. So one of my first, I guess, major areas of actually accomplishment was moving into the Pentagon as a work environment and starting to support developing computer systems there. Now, there were several other smaller projects, and I actually have worked with all four branches of the military service, the Joint Chiefs of Staff, and the Secretary of Defense, working to configure and support networks, systems, and security. But working to help lead a data center back in the day before they even called it a data center was one of the major challenges to help really grow my skill set and learning how to work with teams in a team and environment where you may or may not be on the same team, but you all work there for the same goal. So that was probably something that was a project that grew me significantly technically, and it came from me working late. And the gentleman who was the Navy captain that was in charge of that system noticed that I would always stay at the end of the day and start a log of what I had accomplished and what I had planned for the next day, and he would ask me questions. Well, I realized after a couple of months, he actually was interviewing me for another position, and that's what got me to be the lead of a data center in the Pentagon some like 20 years ago, a little bit over 20 years ago.
Wow. Okay, so just to drive home that point that you made of that huge accomplishment, and just for everybody listening, that you never know where your next opportunity is going to come from. So if you're on a job, and regardless if it's IT or not, you have to make sure that you're performing to the level that people start recognizing your accomplishments, because that's how a lot of people make transitions. I know I was able to transition the same way by just creating different things that weren't necessarily in my job description, but it actually added to my job description that show value. And it seems like, Charles, that's what you did, was you just started doing stuff, staying late, creating a log, showing people all the things that you've done to show value in your position, and that's just so key. So what are some of the other special services that you offer with your organization?
So I spent a little bit of time internationally, and that was probably another one of those major growing leaps. I spent a year in Iraq helping with the reconstruction after the war back in 2003. And there I went in as a team lead and I had a team of communications professionals, and our job was to support the Department of Defense in rebuilding the communications, voice, data, and internet infrastructure for that country to help get them back on task. And we actually was recognized by the Department of Defense with a couple of awards, but one of them was for completing over 150 projects in less than 6 months on something that would have taken more than a year.
Wow, wow. So if somebody wanted to pursue a career the way that you've done it, I get lots of people who, attend different universities that pursue information technology or engineering or cybersecurity. What is some of the obstacles that you had to overcome just to try to get into that realm? Because while anybody can go to college and get a degree, there's certain things that has to be in place in order for you to get those opportunities. So, what advice would you give those people?
The first advice I would give every young person is to have a mentor or a team of mentors, individuals that can guide you in the different areas and aspects of your life so that as you build yourself, these individuals, pretty much like today, you hear a lot of people either having or looking at life coaches, but back then we didn't have that concept, but it's the same basic principle of having someone to mentor you. And I can say I was fortunate enough to have a few mentors in the information technology field. I shared what my interests were. I stated my goals. They helped me redefine or define my purpose and my approach, and I used that. And if I had, particularly when I had a problem, I had people I could go and speak with that would help kind of guide me through how to approach it. Because one of the things I've learned is that when you have challenges, you want to come in with a perspective of how to move forward in a positive way. And yes, you may complain a little bit, but after you finish complaining, you still have to do something that makes a difference, and you want it to be a positive difference. And when people realize that you, like others, have challenges, but you also want to approach this challenge in a way that improves yourself and improves the situation, you then start learning how to make yourself better, but also to make the community and the environment that you work in a better place. And that's
Okay.
something that everybody should do.
Okay. All right. So I'm probably gonna delve deeper into this point only because there's quite a few females now that is entering the IT world as opposed to 4 or 5 years ago. What is your experience of the different ratio between men and women, and particularly in the minority community, in being in the engineering field or in just in information technology in general?
So I was fortunate enough that when I started out, the program that I got my scholarship through, since it was focused on African Americans slash minorities, it actually offered the same opportunity to males and females. So I actually worked with quite a few African American females in engineering. And some of us, we're still friends to this day, even though we're spread all across the country. For the young ladies who are going into the field, yes, you're going to find that it's going to be a high percentage of men. But if you know how to conduct yourself as any other professional, and you'll know when you're working with the right people with the right perspective on working with the individual, working with the person, and not so much working with you based on your gender. Just like people don't work with us just because we're black or African American, they work with you because you're a professional. And if you find that you're working with people that have that attitude, you'll go a lot further if you present yourself in that manner first. And for those individuals who happen to not fall in that category, it's kind of interesting if you start positioning yourself to stay on the track of the positive, progressive, and productive path, then they're going to work with you, or somehow they're going to be moved out of the way. And there are many ways for people to be moved out of the way, but you stay focused, and believe me, the help will come your way
To help
first.
overcome. I think that's true because I think the reason why I've been so successful in the positions that I held as a female in IT is because I took the emotion out of it. You know, I can go home and probably scream Bloody Mary all day, but when I'm in the workplace, I'm very neutral and I don't take things personally. And I try to look at things as it's a task or it's something that's required. And I try to keep the emotion out of it. And ladies tend to be very emotional. We are very emotional, but sometimes we have to learn how to turn that switch off. And if we just do that, you'll be more neutral, and people will look at you as any any other professional. And I think that that's a helpful tip for any female who is currently pursuing information technology in general and have asked questions or have asked me questions. How do you deal with an all male environment, or how do you get in being a female? One of the number one things you have to do, regardless what position it is, in any industry that's out there, is that you have to kind of keep that emotion in check.
Yes, you do.
So I want to ask another question, because this is a hot burning question that I get a lot. You have a background in cybersecurity. So a lot of people who are getting these degrees today have the ideal that they can get a degree and get into cybersecurity. But I kind of want to hear from your perspective what cybersecurity is really like out in the workplace in terms of performance, of what you need to do, what expectations, because this is the hot topic. That's the burning question that people are having today. How can I get into cybersecurity?
Okay, so there are a lot of approaches that are available. I think one of the first things people have to realize in any profession, there are, or I should say in any industry, there are different levels for the professionals. So if you come in as a technician, that will be the lowest level that you can come in professionally. If you want to come in as someone with a college degree, you want to look at, is your degree an upgrade from being a technician, or is it an opportunity that can propel you into different areas of interest, of leadership, and maybe even some executive positions? So for cybersecurity, I know a lot of people major in areas like criminology or different aspects of law enforcement. And a lot of those degrees, I think people are finding challenges because there are so many places that offer that type of degree. It doesn't distinguish you from people who have, say, engineering, computer science, or some of the more challenging degrees, because those degrees actually give you a lot of flexibility. One of the suggestions I make to young people when they're looking at, and of course, whatever degree or whatever major you want to go into, do some research and find out what that is. But look at what places are asking for based on the skills and abilities that you want to utilize in whatever career path that you choose. And if you start noticing, for example, I notice in a lot of the technical fields, particularly when there's some challenging aspects of strategy, analysis, one of the things they would say is whatever the area the expert is looking for, then they'll give options like or a computer or engineering or some other technical degree. And what that means is that because of the way those degrees are acquired, you have the skills and abilities to transfer that to another area of interest, and that doesn't necessarily have to be in the engineering or technology field. So cybersecurity, while it's very wide open now, there are actually a lot of positions, a lot of opportunity where you don't have to have a highly technical degree, but you do have to have certain skill sets that differentiate you from those who are coming in just to support the task in the areas of responsibility, rather than being able to make decisions and strategize on how to defend and defeat against problems and those that would challenge the security of individuals, organizations, or even the country for that matter.
And yeah, I just want to make sure I drive home that point, is that you got to come in with some type of skill set. And I tell my mentees all the time that you could be in a totally different industry, but you have to show some progression to go towards your goal. If you're trying to get into cybersecurity or be an information assurance analyst, you have to kind of start to get those skills. And if you have zero experience, then that's where you need to kind of take a pause and start getting that experience, and then use the degree, as you said, Charles, as a support mechanism, because it is a very unique and specialized industry, and there's so many different ways that you could do cybersecurity. There's so many areas that you could be in, and you have to be sure as to what you want. So, Charles, you have a bunch of initiatives that you are working on. So, tell us about some of the initiatives that you are very passionate about and that you want everybody on this podcast to know.
Okay, so I'll start with a segue from the cybersecurity. A lot of times, an individual, a young person will say, "Well, I don't have any training, or we don't have any money to go to college or get any special training." And one of the things that I have found from my own experience, and I've shared it with many individuals and young people that I've worked with and mentored, is that you can actually start your training for free. And that's where the internet comes in. There are so many opportunities out there for an individual to get themselves started for free. And I would even say an individual who has the right ambition, I can show any person how to get a business started for free starting day one. And it's skill sets that you already have, but the one thing you have to have is the ability to be coachable, to learn how to do what you need to do next to grow yourself. Um, and a lot of people take for granted what's on the internet, but I call the internet kind of like a school, but it's really more like a library. And you can go out there and find information on pretty much anything you want. Of course, you need to know how to discern valid and invalid information. But once you understand that you're getting good information from even some of the major colleges and universities, you can get yourself started on a path and a foundation with no money. If you can get access to the internet, starting at the library, that's also free. And I'm sure many people have family and friends that can get you online. You can get started, and then you start growing yourself and growing your skills. And you'll realize that as you grow, people will come to you, particularly when you let it be known that you're growing yourself in this area. And that's one of the things I work with is helping people to understand that if you start growing yourself professionally and personally, that you can make a difference in your life first, and then all the people around you. And the more you develop yourself, the more people will appear that will help you grow. And that's in any area of expertise.
Okay, fantastic. Um, is there anything that anybody who's listening to this podcast or networking in this event can help you with?
I would say if I could just reach more people to help them understand that the more people you can help, the better off we all will be. And it's really about being of service. And I guess when you kind of think back what I shared about the way I started being recognized, is those small extra tasks that I was doing was being of service. And I enjoy meeting people the same way you and I met. I enjoy discussing what I do, but what I enjoy more is finding out what other people do and how we can collaborate and grow each other. And if we have more people working together to grow each other, that will help me immensely. The more people I can help and the more I can help them help others, that is what I think will make this community, this country, and this world a much better place. We just have to all learn how to work together. So anybody that reaches out to me, I will reach back and see what we can do to grow each other. That's what I've been doing. That's what I enjoy doing. I think that's going to make a difference. The more we do that, the better the world's going to be.
Fantastic. So, are there any other services that you kind of want to throw out there before we end the podcast, just to make sure that we cover all the bases and make sure that you have the opportunity to let people know what events that you might be involved in, or any other initiatives that you might need help with as well?
So I normally attend training every month. There's rarely a month that I skip doing some type of training. Um, One of the things I do is I offer this training sometimes for free to share with other professionals. So if anyone reaches out to me, I will share with them training that I receive. And one of the areas that I'm growing myself in now, which I think every business, particularly small businesses and startups, is to look at digital access as part of how you develop your services and deliver your products to your clients. Digital access, and we hear some of the derogatory aspects like digital divide, but what we're really talking about is there's an opportunity for everyone to connect themselves and their businesses and their services via digital access. It's lower cost, it's faster delivery, and it gives you ways and abilities to help people who are not necessarily geographically located where you are, and you can start assisting more people. So for me, I look for people who are interested in taking advantage of some of the services I come in contact with. Um, this let's see, this weekend I'm going to some training, and for the people who join me, I offer free materials. All they have to do is get themselves there. And anyone that calls me, if I'm going to a training and I can assist, I will help them get involved and receive some benefit from the trainings that I'm involved with.
Okay, Charles, so I want to ask you a question. You talked a little bit about digital design earlier in your conversation. Can you give me a definition of what exactly is digital design, what it is, and how it actually works?
Thanks. Yes, Ann. So digital design deals with taking your business processes and redesigning them using technology to improve either the services you render or your return on your investment or reducing your costs and the resources required to deliver those services. But we're actually moving into a new level, and that is digital access. And digital access actually utilizes technology to assist in delivering services that's completely different than the old model that they sometimes replace or a brand new model that's being introduced. So, for example, a lot of people now have heard of the company Uber. A lot of people at home use a service called Netflix. There are numerous services that people use every day that used to be delivered where you had to go into a place of business, you had to talk to a person, you had to discuss what your requirements are, and then you would receive whatever product or service. Amazon is another company that uses digital access to deliver. I mean, think about it. You don't have to go to the store now. You can go online, find a product that's in a store, and have it delivered to your home within 1 or 2 days, and in some major cities now in just a couple of hours. So digital access is really changing the way services are delivered by large companies, but it's now something that small companies and even individuals can start and implement in their lives to get access to services and deliver services to their clients and their customer base.
Okay, so what will be the most cost-effective way for them to get started with that? Do they have to go to people like Amazon or some of those other large conglomerates? How can they do this for themselves?
So a lot of people deal with social media, but even before social media was at the level that it is now, we had websites. And you can still use a website to deliver services, but you can now augment that website because so many people you have smartphones, mobile devices. You can use apps, which essentially is a small program that works on mobile or desktop devices that allows individuals to access services from anywhere. So now with the internet, data services, and a mobile device, usually a smartphone, you can use that device to access services, including going to a website. But if you have an app designed for a smartphone, you can now have a customer or a potential customer go directly to your product or service base, review what you offer, and you can deliver that service directly through that smartphone.
Okay. And so that's going to also involve making sure that you're set up with some type of shipping method and some other type of, way to manage all of that stuff when you have to deal one-on-one if you're not dealing with a third party like Amazon. And also, I don't know if you know or have experience knowledge of, but there's a lot of companies out here that is actually building apps for your business. You can
Yes,
go on places where you can actually have an app develop a person develop an app for you so that you could use it for something like what you're saying, right?
that's correct. Now, if you're a small business, I wouldn't suggest people go out and spend um, tens of thousands of dollars to develop an app to deliver their service. You can actually start with a very simple app design and start delivering service. And you mentioned a very important point. Having the digital access still requires the company to pay attention to the quality of service and the delivery of goods. But if you was already shipping goods and providing services before, just with human resources or some type of storefront, all you're really doing is changing the way people get access to request those services. And if the delivery was something you was going to ship anyway, you already have that in place. You just have to make sure that your quality controls extend into that digital access or that digital process environment. So a company can start with something very small, and you don't have to do everything at once. You can just augment with a few services using digital access, and then add to those services. I mean, there are companies now when you look at the apps we have, which we have millions now, you can ask for almost any kind of service through an app as well as through a website.
Okay. Are there any other type of services or type of technologies that are out there that is a part of digital design?
Oh, there are numerous technologies. I mean, starting with how you design. So the two major delivery approaches now is through an Android device and through an Apple device, mostly iPhones. But those are the two major app digital access providers. But you can also still use your tablets, your computers, even your e-readers, like your Kindles and other devices that are built on different platforms. But the two major delivery devices right as it stands now, and the software they use is Android and Apple, but you can use different design tools to make those services available to your end user. And like you said, there are a lot of companies that will help you do that, and there are a lot of companies that have gotten the cost to where now it's quite reasonable for small companies or even individuals to create an app and start delivering goods and services through that app.
Okay, fabulous. Okay, so I want to turn the conversation over to something else that you have in your bio, which is the Washington Technology Group, the SETA Corporation. Tell us a little bit about that and what you did with that organization.
Okay, so that particular company, along with two other organizations that I did work for as a consultant, we mostly provided services to the federal government, and more specifically the Department of Defense. There, we provided all types of information technology, cybersecurity, system support, design integration, and process redesign, including and a lot of people are paying attention now to security, but something's called certification and accreditation, which is a process of identifying what you need to maintain the integrity and the protection of your system so that it can do the job that it's designed to do. And those companies are companies that I consulted with to provide those services to the federal government. And I actually provided those services globally. So most of the work is in the U.S., but the federal government, as we know, we have embassies and locations all around the world. And I work with several locations around the world, and with a team of individuals in information technology, we delivered all of the services that you can think of, everything from help desk to system design to integration to strategy analysis and planning for those next generation technologies that we see coming out now more regularly than we did several years ago.
Okay, so if a company is out there listening right now and they are interested in doing something similar to what you're doing or used to do with the federal government, how would they go about setting themselves up to be able to work for the Department of Defense?
For an individual or small company that wants to go into government contracting, the
Hmm.
first thing I would suggest is that they take a class or attend an event that's usually provided either through the Small Business Administration or the particular agency or department in the government that they're looking at. And they actually give training specifically to companies and individuals to help you get started. There are a number of requirements, and in my opinion, one of the most important requirements is in organizations that require a lot of security clearance and handling of special information or delivering of special services. Those organizations will probably be a little bit more challenging, but if you start out with the ones that don't have the high security requirements, you can at least get an understanding of the process. And from there, you want to be familiar with all of the federal regulations for the agency you're working with and all of the equipment and the technologies you're going to handle. And it's spelled out, I'm going to say, quite clearly, but with a lot of information that you may need help with. And there are other agencies like in I think about it, the agencies that handle standards. They will provide help with you understanding what the requirements and the regulations are and the policies that sometimes can change while you're in the midst of providing services, and you have to augment your delivery so that you can address these new policy requirements that are often put in place. But start with the organization you want to do business with and ask them what is the best way to start providing services and help them with their mission and their goal. And they actually have an office that will help you get started.
Okay. And before they even go to that point, I know that for myself, I have to make sure that I have my DUNS number, my EIN, set up my business structure, make sure that you sign up for the SAM registration and have those NASIC codes so that the government will know what services that you provide, because without doing that, you won't be able to even compete or even get an award. That's correct, right, Charles?
That is very correct. As a matter of fact, one of the services that I work with, and I mentioned earlier, I consult with several companies. There's one company I work with that will actually help any individual or small company that wants to make sure that they meet all of the legal requirements for their organization and the services they want to deliver. I can help them get access to legal services that will help them align their businesses and ensure that they are properly certified, registered, and capable of handling from a legal perspective everything that's required to compete in any industry.
Yeah, definitely. And if you want to provide me that information, Charles, I'll make sure that I put it on the website. If not, we're going to have everybody contact you, because we have to make sure that you are legal in there, because there's so many different rules and regulation when it comes to contracting with the federal government. I know for my own self, for Austin Tech being a federal contractor, what I had to go through just to even qualify. And then there's still some other things that I have to set up before I can even compete for a contract. And I want to make sure everybody understands that it's not an easy thing. There's a lot of work involved, and you have to really do your research and put in place what you need to put in place.
That's quite true. As a matter of fact, something kind of interesting that kind of ties into digital access,
Hmm.
the services for helping you start and launch a business properly and make sure you have all your legal requirements aligned. That service is delivered via a digital access model.
Oh, really?
Yes,
So is
which means
that
I can
on?
help.
Okay, so where's it located? Is it on like one of the federal government websites?
No, this is a private company, but it gives you access to highly qualified law firms that work with you on your individual needs to help you. Let's say you're an individual and you want to start a company,
Mhm.
they will help you start the company and get everything set up and running.
Okay. Are they very affordable? Because I know a lot of people are probably thinking, are they cost effective?
Very, extremely affordable and very cost effective. You can get this process started for under $200.
Wow. All right, folks, you heard it. Get your money ready. You're going to have to do it. I know I'm going to get mine. So make sure that you definitely contact him to get more information, to find out about the legal company that's helping you, because all of the tools and things that are shared on this podcast is to help you make sure that you have a solid foundation for your business. So please reach out to Charles. His contact information is on the bottom of his speaker page. And also, please be sure to visit all of the pages and listen to all of the podcasts from all these amazing speakers. And, I'm going to say all because it's a lot of information, and I want people to be informed and make informed decisions. So, Charles, I would like to thank you so much for being on this podcast and sharing with everybody your journey, your amazing background in information technology and engineering, and just inspiring us to embrace the digital design that's happening today out here on the internet.
Okay, thank you, Ann, and thank you for letting me share. And I hope everyone truly take a look at this digital access um, a wave that's coming across the world. I mean, we hear about the technology, but now we're moving beyond the technology, and this digital access is about relationship building, and that's what we all should be doing: is building good, high-quality relationships so that we can work together and build together and achieve a lot of those goals. I mean, it's not just about us, but it's also about the legacy that we leave. And I'm a person that believes in legacy coming from a large family. Legacy is something that's very important. And that's what I'm hoping to do, is to build my family's legacy and help as many other families as possible.